Wow, so what a lot of material and content we've covered there in the last hour and a half that you've been with us. And hopefully today's been a really useful opportunity for you to hear about what's going to happen next, whether your young person is going to university, they're thinking about college applications, or they might be looking to go down that apprenticeship route. So what we're going to be doing for the next 15 minutes or so is we're going to welcome our lovely panel back to the team, and we're going to start to run through some questions. So please do use that question and answer chat functionality that's available. We're also going to run through some of those pre-submitted questions which came in for those of you that were able to fill in that form for us beforehand. So the first one we're going to start with that I'm going to run through is when or how would we know specific dates of the application process? And as you heard a short while ago from Pete, it is going to be slightly different for each student and for each school. And one thing I'd say is obviously the pandemic and the last 18 months has changed some of these deadlines, but keep in regular contact with your school, and your young person should be getting this information through as well. But to give you a rough idea, we've scheduled this event now to kind of give you guys a bit of a head start on what's going to be happening. The summer term tends to be when your young person will be at school. They'll be talking about the UCAS application. So the school will start to get them ready. They'll register them on UCAS and they'll start doing the admin side of it. You'll also find that universities and colleges will start to be running open days. Now, obviously, we'd all ideally like these to be physical, but it might be that you have to attend some virtual open days this year. Things are going to be a little bit different. But the likelihood is that by the time your young person finishes for the summer term, their school or college will want them to have a first draft of that personal statement ready. So that over the summer, they can be working on it. They can be thinking about making those choices about which university or college is right for them. They can be thinking about which courses they want to apply for, because your young person can choose up to 5 courses on that UCAS application. Now, obviously, if they're applying for an apprenticeship, there's an unlimited number of apprenticeships they can apply for, but they still need to think about what courses they're looking for, what sector they want to be specialising in. And it's really important that the young person uses those summer holidays to make some progress on the decisions they're making, but also thinking about that personal statement, because when they come back in the autumn, whether they're going on apprenticeship, whether they're going to college or university, things will ramp up a bit with a focus on finishing coursework and getting those assignments in. So if they've got that head start on their personal statement already, that's going to get them ahead of the game. And as you've heard in the presentation already, if your young person is thinking about Oxbridge, so that's any of the main Oxford colleges, or they're looking at Cambridge, they want to study medicine or they want to study veterinary medicine, they will have an earlier deadline. So their UCAS deadline will be the 15th of October. For the other students, they will be aiming for the 15th of January. Now, it's really important to highlight here that that is the UCAS deadline, but at that point, all of the UCAS application needs to be done, but also the school or college that your young person is currently studying at, they need to have been able to do their references. So have a chat with your young person and make sure they know what that internal deadline is within the school or college for them to be aware of. Once those applications have gone in, the main bit for your young person is over and done with. They now wait to see which university or colleges want to offer them a place. And generally, if their application goes in by the 15th of January deadline, they should have all of their responses back by the end of March. Now, it might be that if that application goes in before Christmas, they might get some lovely early Christmas presents in the form of some UCAS offers, okay? In terms of student finance, the window for that tends to kick in back end of February, middle of March. There isn't anything that you can be doing on the actual application before that date. As we've just heard in that video, there's loads of great tips and things that you can be doing with your young person to help them be prepared from a budgeting point of view, but the application itself tends to be kind of around the spring of their final year, either at school or at college. Over the course of the spring and the summer, your young person will need to whittle those 5 choices down to just 2, their firm and their insurance choice. And alongside that, they'll then be thinking about their accommodation options, and it all then starts to ramp up towards results day. One of the biggest things I'd say, though, is keep in regular contact with your school or with the college that your young person is currently at. They will be the ones that will be reminding them, helping them, sharing that information. And you might even find that a bit like we've run this event for you today, your school and college might also be doing similar events to help you guys make sure that you know which bits you can be doing and where you can kind of poke and prod and help your young person kind of keep on track as well. And also after the event, some of the resources that we're sharing with you afterwards, hopefully might help you keep on track and help your young person with the next steps and planning and scheduling things as well. Hopefully that helps. One of the next questions we've had come in is, how does the young person make a university application and actually apply for student finance? So I've touched on some of those little bits and pieces, but I'm going to hand over to Chloe, one of our lovely student ambassadors, to talk us through her experience and kind of the process she went through when she was applying to Anglia Ruskin.
Thank you, Kate. So, I mean, it was a long time ago, but yeah, I can remember it pretty much like it was yesterday, because I was not set on university. That was not something that was for me. I was just like, go into the real world, just go for it. And then I had a bit of a career change and thought, oh yeah, teaching sounds good. And you've got to go to university to do secondary. So it was kind of a quick turnaround for me. And my sixth form student support were absolutely brilliant. I mean, I think I sat in their office for a couple of hours a week just trying to get my personal statement down to a T, making sure that all my teachers were helping, because obviously you need to include volunteering, your specific courses that you want to apply for. Mine was very film and media based, as that's what my course is. But I also did a lot of volunteering in the teaching as well, just kind of putting it out there that that was what my career prospect was. I mean, you don't need to know what you want to do, because I mean, my friends don't. They haven't got a clue what they want to do when we leave, and we're third years. So, I mean, yeah, in terms of my experience, it was different to some others, but I know a lot of students that went through it where it was kind of a very, very quick turnaround of getting your personal statement done. It does put a bit more pressure on you. But like Kate said, once it's in, it's kind of a waiting game. And you get a unconditional or conditional. There's two different types. And I mean, I'm so grateful Anglia Ruskin gave me an unconditional offer. But yeah, it was, the personal statement is the hardest part. And I mean, I do talks from like, yeah, personal statement, you need to write this, this, and this. But writing it for myself for the second time, I'm really struggling, like, to make sure that I sell myself. And that is the key part. Don't think you're being too big-headed, because it usually is a good thing. You need to sell yourself, because there is a lot of people applying for that course. So you need to make sure that you are making yourself stand out. So if you want to go into medicine or that sort of area, maybe volunteer as like somebody that stands outside the jab places and posts people everywhere. Like, that will give you a good point to the people that are looking at your CV or your personal statement or your UCAS application, because it's like, oh, okay, they've gone out and they've done what they wanted to do. They're already putting themselves in the industry where they want to be. And I mean, I've done that. I've done NCS, I've been to America and done camp, and those sort of things really do put you in a better space. So I would definitely look around volunteering and things like that, because that helps with your personal statement and your application, makes you stand out.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that with Chloe. So, having looked at the student perspective, one of our other questions, and kind of links brilliantly in with the way we've run today, is what is there as parents to help us support our child towards higher education? So I think we're brilliantly placed. We're very lucky to have one of University of Suffolk's amazing parent ambassadors with us. So Nikki, I wondered if you could kind of offer some thoughts on your viewpoint on it for us, please.
Yes, certainly, Kate. Thank you. So the biggest tip I'd probably give is to make sure that anything that is offered from the school, from sixth forms or college, you take it. You know, never think if you've, oh, I've been to that, I won't learn anything. You will. Go twice, go 3 times, go as many times as you need to go to get all the information that you need. Be honest with your child as well. So if you've got a question that you want to ask but think it's a silly one, it probably isn't. So just ask it and get it out there, or they might not have even thought about it. So the things your child will think about or your young adult will think about is totally different to what you're thinking about that university application and what they're looking for. You know, they might be looking at how much is a pint of beer, or what's the party like, or what's the area like. Well, you'll be thinking more practically about different questions. So be honest, ask the questions, take all of the support that you possibly can from the schools and the colleges. I believe some of the colleges and universities will have not only their perspectives, but they'll also have information that's double info with the parent information as well as the student information. So take that information as well. and give yourself time. I think we've already mentioned sort of a time scale, but give yourself time to think and have those conversations with your child and believe in them if they have any doubts, because it's not just about their ability to be able to do the course, it's their ability sometimes to be able to live away from home and be independent. So have those conversations, be honest and believe in them is what I would say.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, one of the things we couldn't avoid talking about today is kind of the impact of COVID-19 and the pandemic on the young people around us, but also the situations you guys as parents and carers might find yourselves in. And one of the questions we had come in was a question around what universities themselves are doing for students who have been impacted by the pandemic. It might be that they're one of the young people who hasn't been able to take an exam. It might be that actually there's been an impact on their health and well-being. And so, Melanie, I'm going to hand over to you. You're very kindly going to talk us through some of the things that we know about that universities and colleges have been doing to try and support those students as they transition and once they're at university as well.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I think the video that was on just a little while ago really highlighted actually what there is available to young people as they're going into university. And one of the key things it highlighted was there's university-led support, but really to take advantage of that student-led support as well. So in terms of university-led support, there's, you know, across every university, there's well-being support out there and student support. So that could be anything from supporting your mental health to supporting people who might have disabilities, and support with student life as well, that transition actually from like moving away from home, making friends, being in a new environment. One of the things that quite a lot of universities offer is learning enhancement support as well. So if you are feeling a little bit like you're out of your depth with the study, there's access to mentoring, there's online resources, study skills sessions as well. There's a lot of qualified people at university to help with your mental health and with your study as well. So definitely accessing that support is really key. In terms of student-led support, societies are one of the best places you can go to make friends and just to be able to talk with other people about how you're feeling. So for example, at UEA, there's a great society called Heducate, and it's run by students, and the society really opens up those conversations about well-being and also addresses stigma about mental health and encourages those conversations. So that's really key. And finally, one of the things that the video also touched on was apps as well. And I think, you know, we are in a digital world and there are so many amazing things that we can get online as well. So downloading apps that are available to university students, and that can help you access support, and it can also help you just manage your own emotions or track your own emotions and how you're feeling at the time. And always go out, take walks, go into green spaces and meet people. And I think that's really key what universities are focusing on at the moment.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that with Melanie. And that just kind of before we finish our Q&A and just kind of leave some final thoughts with you, I'm just going to hand back both to Chloe, our student ambassador, and Nikki, our parent ambassador, to leave us with some of their reflections or recommendations from kind of looking back on their experience of applying to higher education, choosing their courses, and then their journey while they've been there, and just kind of things that they would leave you with you guys as a takeaway. So Chloe, I'm going to hand over to you first, if I can, please.
Yeah. So my first thing is probably go onto the UCAS website and just type in the course that they are maybe thinking about. Like, you can do it as well as the young person, because you might get a different perspective of what the young person does. You might see something that they don't, because I mean, they're so excited about university, they'll just scroll through and go, oh, maybe Nottingham, or oh, this one sounds good. Just have a look. And the modules are so important, because there may be something that they're like, oh, this course looks great, I've got I just like the area, I like this, but there might be something on there that they don't like. There might be a whole term, like a whole semester of things that they don't like. So that is really important. Go onto the UCAS website and just look through all the courses that are available, because I didn't actually realise how many were available for me. Another thing since I've been at university is to kind of get involved with everything. I mean, I'm a commuter student, so I have to push myself to get involved with things, and that's helped me become more confident and things like that. I would have never done anything like this before university. But yeah, you've got to really push yourself. Like, I'm a student ambassador. There's societies that's already been spoken about. You've got Freshers Week, or Freshers Fortnight, as some people now call it, because it goes on for so long. The Students' Union. I mean, you can represent your course. There's so much out there that you can do, but it's just going and pushing. And I mean, as parents, that you might like things out there you don't really know exist. So it's kind of helping them look through that sort of stuff. I mean, my parents kind of have helped me in terms of have a look at universities and go out there and see what there is. And one more thing is open days. They are so important. I couldn't stress that enough. I went to 3, and then Anglia Ruskin, it was just an applicant day, because it was just one of those options that you just put as your 5th one. And if I had gone to an applicant day, I think that would have been my first choice. I would have just put that, but it was just a one that you just threw out. But now with being online and things being virtual, you can attend 2 or 3 open days at once, because there might be different events going on at different times. So you can see different universities and compare them at the same time, which I think is going to be really useful. And I think some universities will continue to do it that way, because people don't have to travel here and there. I mean, I travelled to Plymouth, and I live near Peterborough. So, and that was a real big commute. Like, we had to spend the weekend down there. And now it's just you sit in your living room and you just have a look on there. But yeah, open days are super important. And yeah, I think that's mine. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, actually, that leads on really, really well to a question that we did have submitted from one of our attendees, which talks about a young person who's interested in studying medicine and having already been really proactive and looking at what the universities are doing, saying that actually not so much information out there about whether they're going to be physical, whether they're going to be virtual, and just the question talks about, do we know if they're going to be in person? Do we know if they're going to all be virtual? What are universities going to lead back to, and kind of when that information might be available? So Melanie, I'm going to hand over to you to kind of talk us through some of the thoughts that we've put together on that.
Yeah, I think Chloe makes a really important point. You know, ideally you'd love to visit the campus for an open day, but like Chloe said, actually being able to have access to different campuses, you know, without having to travel saves a lot of time and money and energy. But it also means universities have had to really up their game to showcase what's available on campus. And so these digital tours that they offer and these digital open days are really, really valuable to kind of get that sense of what that university's like. And they're trying to sell themselves. So, you know, they're offering the best bits out there and the most exciting bits. So it's really useful actually to attend as many of those virtual open days as possible. One thing that is opening up though is campus tours. So do check on university websites if they're offering campus tours. I think the best thing actually is being able to attend a virtual open day, and then if you really do get, you and your young person get that sense of like, oh, you know, we'd like to kind of make this next step, then see if you can book onto a campus tour. These will be smaller. They might not be as big a buzz as they would be during an open day, but it means you have the opportunity with your young person to really get a sense of the feel of the campus and to take your time kind of wandering around. You'll usually be led by like a student ambassador or someone who knows the campus inside out. And that just then gives you the opportunity to back up, you know, your choices really, and what you want to do next. So yeah, keep an eye on the university websites. UEA, for example, are offering campus tours between I think April and June, so they're coming up really, really soon, and definitely book onto those and get the chance to really get a feel for the campus and walk around.
Brilliant, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Melanie. And just one of the bits looking at the question kind of talks about, is there anywhere to find a listing of open days? I know opendays.com is somewhere that a lot of the institutions subscribe to and will send details. The other thing is social media. A lot of universities use TikTok, they use Instagram, Facebook, so Twitter, all of those different options. So either yourself or your young person, just kind of follow them on the various social media platforms, and they will be promoting. And as soon as they're able to do something in person, they'll be really keen to welcome you guys back. So really do have a look. So finally, before we leave some closing thoughts with you and hand back over to Naomi, just want to leave our last question across to Nikki, our lovely parent ambassador, just to leave kind of you some thoughts for our attendees about kind of your experience of supporting someone through that higher education journey, and any final tips you'd leave for our attendees, please, Nikki?
Yes, certainly, Kate. So I probably would say be open-minded, definitely. You know, always encourage them to explore everything. Don't rule anything out, and keep everything on the table. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Ask them all the time, every day, whenever you need to. And probably the biggest one would be get excited for them. They're going to be nervous, but they're going to be excited, and they need you to be excited with them. They don't need you to be I mean, I know I was nervous, we're all nervous for them, and are they going to be all right, are they going to be all right, but try not to let that show. Get excited and get involved for them.
And one of the questions we had come through was about what to do to help build your confidence, or where do you start? That was the way it was worded. And one of the things that I wanted to say is we've already taken those steps. Coming to an event like this evening hopefully has given you a little bit more confidence. It's given you a little bit more information and potentially some useful pointers on where to look next. And the other thing I'd say is don't worry if you don't know the answer. I'm sure you'll hear both from Michelle and from Chloe across the course of the evening that you're not expected to know the answer straight out. That's why you've got so many great resources. So I think the biggest tip I'd say is don't be afraid to ask questions, whether it's of the schools or colleges that your young person attends, whether it's of friends who might have siblings or might have, sons or daughters who've already been to university, or even ask questions of your young person. What do they want from you? Is it that actually they need your help working out where you can get to an open day, how far is too far in terms of where you're prepared to travel to support them, or even just helping them to make that decision. And the other thing I'd say is, as well as it being a new experience for you, it's also going to be a new experience for your young person. Yes, they might have seen an older brother or sister go through this, but they might not have done. They might be the first person in your family that's contemplating going to university. So I think one of the things I'd also say is try and enjoy that experience with them and actually make some new memories. Some of my greatest memories from kind of making a decision about where I wanted to go for university was experiences I shared with my mum, who came to open days with me, and we still reflect back on kind of decisions we made, or when we got lost getting to an open day, or even when we nearly got snowed in and couldn't get home from an open day, and that was all part of the journey for me. So talking about that student experience, I'm now going to throw over to Chloe, our lovely Take Your Place student ambassador, and ask her to talk us through kind of her experience and her perspective on the cost of university from a student perspective, because that was one of the questions we had put to us beforehand.
Brilliant, thanks. So in terms of costs, my costs were slightly different because I am a commuter student. So firstly, my student loan is a lot smaller in terms of the maintenance. I get about, I think it's just over £3,000 for the school year. And that has been able to cover my petrol, my bus fares, because I would drive to the Park and Ride and get on from there. Park and Ride tickets for the week were about £21, and if I was in 4 days a week, it was the cheaper option. And I also have a part-time job while I'm at uni, so as though that maintenance loan is good, it sometimes, if I was travelling more to uni or going to Cambridge directly, it didn't always cover it for that term. So a student job was brilliant for me, and that's my ambassador job that I do now. That means working open days, things like this, doing student life talks, going into schools when we're allowed to, and just getting a feel of like helping other students, like what you will be doing as parents, like helping your child, helping them get a good decision on what they want to go. I would never ever push somebody to go to Anglia Ruskin, but I would always give them the best choice at what they had, even if that was pushing them to another university, saying, oh, that one over there has got a good course for that. And student ambassador jobs are paid really well. I think they range between £9.50 and £10.10, somewhere along there, just for an hour's job. And okay, you're not going to get as many hours as what you might get at Tesco's or any other normal job on the high street, but it's brilliant. It's a good job to have, and it builds your confidence, like Kate was saying, it builds your confidence more as well, and you become, I don't know, I've become a different person through it. But my costs are very, very different to somebody that would have lived on campus and would be paying for accommodation, bills, food and things. But I know a lot of them also have student jobs. Quite a lot are student ambassadors, but some work in supermarkets, clothes shops and things like that.
Brilliant, that's great, thank you, Chloe. And one of the questions linking into some of the things we had asked during the evening was talking about, we can't avoid the situation at the moment. We've run this event virtually because unfortunately we can't bring you to any one of our campuses at the moment. So one of the questions we got asked was about how students can actually get a true sense of the institution from a virtual open day, because obviously there's only going to be a snapshot of that open day shown and that institution shown. And one of the questions we had asked was about, do we know and what do we think about whether or not universities might be open this year for physical visits to help those young people make their decisions? So I'm going to pass that over to Melanie to answer for us, please.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. At the moment, we know that there are no physical open days at the moment due to COVID restrictions. Obviously, when universities are able to get those up and running again, they will. But what they've had to do, actually, universities at the moment, they've really had to ramp up their just how they sell themselves online, really, through digital and virtual open days. So it's definitely worth taking a look at as many universities as possible through virtual open days. The great thing about that is you can attend as many as you can, squeeze into a day or a weekend or a week. They are quite often open at all hours, so you can go in there at your own time. And they've really managed to make these interactive platforms, just being able to experience everything that you would be able to during an actual open day. This gives you the opportunity to explore as many universities as you like, and then you can start kind of sorting through them, really, and thinking about your shortlist and where you might actually like to go. And many opportunities for campus tours as well at the moment. So UEA, for example, are running campus tours between April and June. And during that time, you can have a self-guided tour where you can explore on your own or with your family, or you can have a student-led tour, which gives you the kind of insights into campus life. So there's a really great opportunity there to be able to really get down to the nitty-gritty of what you want from your university, explore as many as you like, and quite often get the opportunity to pop onto campus and just see it in the flesh, really. And hopefully in the future, when we can, universities will be back up and running and we'll be able to do proper physical open days.
That's brilliant, thanks Melanie. So having talked about it from that perspective, we're now going to draw on the fact that we've got some brilliant ambassadors with us this evening. And first of all, I'm going to throw it over to Chloe and ask her to talk to us about open days from her experience. And we're really lucky that Chloe can talk to us both about her experience from a student when she was making decisions about her next steps, but also from your role as an ambassador. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, at the moment, as an ambassador, how you help out with some of those virtual open days as well.
Yeah, so in terms of my own experience, like what Kate said earlier, that she went with her mum and stuff, I have been with my dad down to Plymouth and did my bar spa with my mum. So I kind of tried to go with each parent. So when we came home, it was kind of like we all had a different perspective on what we thought uni was going to be like. But I would always go to a welcome talk, because they're super important, because you get that instant feel of what the university is like. And sometimes the vice chancellor will talk and give a bit of speech and then hand it over to a student or hand it over to another member of staff. And you get freebies. There was always a good freebie jumper thrown at you. I would also make sure I went to my course talk. It didn't matter whether it was a run from the welcome talk or it was just have a look around the uni myself. But always go to your course talk. You meet people that might be on your course when you join. You'll meet lecturers, and when you see them in September or on applicant day, you then have somebody that you will remember and will be almost like a safety net for you, because when you walk in on your own, it's very different to when you walk in with your parent. If you walk in with your parent, it's kind of like, oh, I'll stick with them, that's fine. But then when you go with on your own, you're kind of like, oh, okay, somebody with that similar age is kind of with you, which again is kind of nice. But as working on one, I never did a campus tour on my own with like as a student, and now I see them as like the most important thing on an open day, because if you don't walk around, you don't actually know anything until you start. And a student telling you what there is to do and what there is to about is actually super important. A lot of the time it is the parents that ask the questions, which is great because then it sparks a question in the student. So in terms of a parent point of view, always ask the first question, which I know can sometimes be quite daunting, but it's definitely ask the first question because then it sparks everybody else in. And also, like, we at Anglia Ruskin use the science building and just put loads of stalls up of like student help, money advice, accommodation, students union. Like, we make sure that the room is full, so that there is port of calls to make the parents feel better, so they kind of know what's going on, as well as the students. And that's a really important thing as well. But now we're online, like what Melanie was saying, you can visit as many as you need to in one day. I mean, I've been doing campus tours online Wednesdays and Saturdays, and then we do open days as well, and we've got one on Saturday, and the course talk. It will be like a normal talk, but you're just sat in your own home, and you can visit as many as you like in one day, which is great.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Chloe. And what I'm now going to do is, Michelle, can I pass over to you to kind of complement that and talk to us about open days from your experience as a parent ambassador and as a parent even? Oh, Michelle, I'm not sure we can hear you at the moment. I'm not sure whether you're still muted at your end, unfortunately. Oh, not quite. I think what we'll do is, if I pass over to Chloe, perhaps to do a second question, and then maybe we'll come back to you in a moment just to see if we can get you there. Oh, hang on.
Yep. Can you?
There we go. Yeah. Hello, we can hear you. Perfect. So yes, I was just saying, if I can hand over to you to talk us through open days from your experience as a parent, please.
Yeah. So what I would say is plan really. Whether you're going to an open day in person or you're doing a virtual open day, I think you need to sit down in advance and decide what sessions you're going to attend, whether that's in a virtual sense or really, because often there's just so much going on, and you know, there's lots and lots to see, but there is actually only so much you can take in. And if you've gone to several university open days, then you'll find that some of the talks are very similar, you know, so one student finance talk is pretty similar to another one. It doesn't really matter which university you're at, so you're not going to need to go to 5 student finance talks, for example, you know, because that really is not what anybody needs. But I think be realistic about what you can achieve in the day and what's really important to you. So Chloe'd already mentioned about course talks, you know, which are just critical really, because the reason why your young person's going to this going to go to this university is because they love the course, you know, and it's got everything that they're looking for. So that's, you know, going to be really critical. I think if it is an in-person day, which we do hope all will eventually come round again, think about travel distances, how long it's going to take you to get there. Are you going to need to stay overnight? All of those sorts of things. You know, we had a sorry tale of breaking down in the car the night before an open day and actually needing to stay in a travel lodge and then get a train from, you know, a station nearby, and all of those exciting sort of things. But, you know, it is just, you need to work that out, because for some families it's just not going to be practical to do some of the travelling that might be involved, or it might be too costly. So, and that needs to be planned in advance. What I would say is have a notebook as a parent, because if you go to 5 open days, you will begin to merge them all into one, and you'll forget what was said somewhere and why this place was good and that one wasn't so good. And you can then just help your young person to reflect on all of that. But I think do have some questions written down that you want to ask that you can't get answers to from the prospectus or the website, and there will be some of those questions. So in my experience, things like where do students live in 2nd and 3rd year? You know, they live on campus 1st year. Where do they live next? How much is it? How far away is it? What's the public transport like? All of those sort of things you're going to find out from a student. You're not going to find that out from, you know, the prospectus or necessarily the website. I think, you know, if your young person is looking at very specific courses, one of mine is doing social work, you know, the question was she going to need a car in order to get to placements? Some universities said yes, others said no. So again, those sorts of things might be important for you. And I think the other thing I would say is remember, it's your young person choosing where they're going to go to university. It isn't your choice. You may not necessarily always agree with their choice, but actually it's about what's the right fit for them. So you're there to support and encourage and reflect and say, well, what about this and what about this? But ultimately it is really about supporting them on the open day to find out what they need to know in order to sort of move on in their journey, so to speak. And I would also say, if you get a chance to do a real in-person open day, look at accommodation and what you're getting for your money, because that varies quite a bit from city to city and university to university, and everybody's got a budget that they're working to. So you do need to be clear about what you can afford and what you're going to get. And if you are doing virtual open days, hopefully you can still go and visit the city or the town that the university's in, even if you can't get into the university. And I think it's worth remembering that your young person is actually going to live in this city or town. They aren't going to live in the university. They're not going to live in the halls of residence permanently. So it's really important that they feel really comfortable in the city or town that they're going to be in. So they're my tips.
Thank you, Michelle. Some really great tips there. And one thing to say is there's so much great information coming both from Chloe and Michelle there. We will share a written version of the kind of questions and answers after the event so that you guys can sit and kind of digest them even further. But I'm going to kind of stay with our ambassadors tonight. And we've talked about lots of different things. We've talked about student finance, we've talked about open days, we've talked about student life, all of those different bits. So I'm going to ask both Chloe and Michelle to give us just their top tips, maybe things that you might not consider, but just their takeaways from the evening and kind of top tips that they'd leave you with. So Chloe, I'm going to come to you first for your top tips, if I can, please.
Yeah, so my first one is like mainly based at a parent point of view, because my parents did this with me, is have like maybe an evening or two where you sit down and go on the UCAS website and just type in what course it is that you want to do, because I didn't realise how many were out there for film and media, and you think, oh my gosh, now where am I going to go? And then you can whittle it down from there through looking at the modules, and that is a part of that top tip, to look at the modules on the UCAS website, because you are going to be there for the 3 years, and if there's a whole term where you don't like the coursework or anything, your marks will drop. That is just how it works. You don't like something, you're not going to put as much effort into it. Another one is to probably just decide pretty early on whether it's going to be a close university or a faraway university, because then you can start to look at the accommodation, or you can look at staying at home and look at the travel costs, because then that sorts your budget. And if your budget's going to be bigger for the accommodation sort of side, then you can work out where it's all going to go. And I wish I had done that early on as well. I managed to get it sorted for my second year, thank God, but not the first year. And finally, it's not about, like, if the young person wants to do it, as hard as it was for my parents, just kind of do it, because I mean, I was like, no, university's not for me, I'm not going to go. I'm not a party girl, and actually I've gone to university and it is way more than just going out and getting drunk. Like, there's societies, there's clubs and things like that, so there is a lot more to it. And I wish that when I was 16, 17, I was told all of this, because I'm the first person in my generation to go, so nobody else kind of knew what uni was about. It was kind of just a first thing. So yeah, that's my top tips.
Brilliant, thanks for sharing that, Chloe. And Michelle, if we can hand over to you again to give us some top tips from your experience as parents supporting each of your children through the process.
Yeah, so I think one of my top tips is around student finance. It's a relatively straightforward process, and I think a lot of parents worry about it. If you get onto the student finance website, there is actually sort of like a rough calculator that will give you, based upon your income, roughly what you're expected to get, or what your young person would be expected to get. And that then gives you a sort of working figure as to how much you are going to have to financially potentially support them. Because for many parents, there will be a parental financial contribution as such, which is expected. And I think you need to have honest conversations with your young person very early on about how much you can afford to help them, and if you can't afford to help them, that they're going to have a part-time job or use savings, or that they're going to have to find a way around it, because actually university is affordable. I have got 3 who have either been through it or are literally sort of finishing off. None of them have got any additional student debt other than the government loans that they were given. They haven't gone into overdrafts and things like that. It's perfectly doable for an average family, but there does need to be some planning that goes into it, and there does need to certainly be some budgeting from the young person's point of view, and you actually need to help them with that as a parent. A lot of young people haven't really got any experience of paying bills or how much things cost, so a little bit of work in those months before they go off to university, I think, is really, really valuable. And I think echoing what Chloe said about knowing what your budget is really important. Some university cities and accommodation is way out of some people's price range, and other cities are much cheaper to live in. And I think what I said is correct. Everybody can afford to go to university, but it unfortunately is a case that some people can't afford to go to certain universities and certain cities just because of the costs that are involved. And I think there's obvious places like London, for example, which we know is exceptionally expensive. There's other cities which are very cheap and people wouldn't even know about it. My daughter went to Cardiff, for example, lived on peanuts really in terms of how much it cost her to live, but other places are more expensive. So I think what I would say is, back to the plan thing, it's about that preparation. Don't leave anything to chance, don't leave any conversations unsaid, and be honest with your young people about how much you can help them. If they're going to need to come home on the train because you can't go and pick them up, they need to know that before they decide to go to Edinburgh or something. Have those real life conversations. If they want to go to Edinburgh, well, they'll have to go, but they're going to have to find their way back, if you know what I mean, and you need to be honest about that, really. So but I think with all the planning and the conversations in place, I think it's doable, and it's I would say my 3 young people have been revolutionised by going to university, not because of the education, but because of the life experience of having to be independent adults out there in the world. And I would say it's definitely something that should be considered by all young people.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Chloe, and thank you to Michelle for being able to share those experiences with us. And I'm going to hand over to Naomi for our last question, which came in and asked the question of when or how should we expect parents and carers and those people helping the young people to know the specific details of that kind of timeline and the application process, and kind of what happens next. They've made a really great step by booking on to attend this evening and get some information and hear from our brilliant ambassadors, but kind of what happens next for them?
Yeah, thank you, Kate. So, like you say, there's been a lot of kind of direction and guidance already today, but your schools and colleges of your young person are really going to be that key contact for letting you know dates. If your young person isn't telling you that and you're not getting that information from them, that's not getting fed down to you, then you can of course go on the UCAS website if you're particularly interested in knowing about the dates for them. If you go onto their website and literally type in key dates, they'll give you a chronological order of all the key dates that you need to know for the application process. You can start following that. Not only that, but of course there is us and our lovely Take Your Place website. We have a whole heap of resources on there surrounding student finance, surrounding the UCAS application. We've got all sorts of videos that will be coming from our presentation today that you can re-watch if you've missed a link or guidance from us while we've been on here. You can watch the video back and go to that. And also what we do have coming up from our lovely collaborative colleges is our Take Your Place virtual fair, which will be happening from the 4th of May all the way up until Friday the 7th of May. They'll have a whole range of different subject talks on there, as well as talks to do with apprenticeships and the application processes. So that would be definitely worthwhile going with your young person, as it is targeted at them, but there'll be a whole range of different talks over those days. We all, of course, will send you more information at the end of our event today. So we are going to be sending out an email to you tomorrow, so please do look out for that. Included in there will be all how to access any of the information from our event. Of course, there'll be information on our Take Your Place virtual fair, and very importantly will be a feedback link for you to complete for us on our events. Your feedback is so valuable, and it really does shape how we do these events for you and the content we provide for you. It's a great way for us to learn how to improve, but also it gives us an indication on what we're doing right, so we can keep replicating that. Thank you so much. I think that's everything from us here today. So I'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much for attending, and thank you all of you who have presented today and taken part in the Q&A. Just really fantastic stuff with you.